Liberia in flames, fire guts, ex-President Weah's 9th Street residence, politics, power, and perception. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, where we unmask power and inspire change. I'm Zainab Karoma. Tonight, we take you to Monrovia, where flames tore through the residence of former President George Weah. Was it an accident, sabotage, or just another reminder of Liberia's fragile institutions? Stay with us as we break down the facts, the politics, the symbolism, and the wider African lessons from this fiery incident. In the early hours of Wednesday, a fire broke out at the 9th Street residence of former Liberian President George Weah, reducing parts of the house, especially the bedroom, to ruins. The incident, which forced local residents to intervene before the Liberia National Fire Service, LNFS, arrived, raises many immediate questions. Was it accident or deliberate? What does it say about governance, security, and institutional capacity in Liberia? And how does Liberia's experience compare to other African states? What we know so far. According to Janga Kawo, acting chairman of the Congress for Democratic Change, CDC, the fire apparently began in Weah's bedroom. He described the internal destruction as massive. Front page Africa. Weah himself is reported to have been unharmed. Reporters were barred from entering the compound, though fire trucks and an ambulance were later seen departing. Political heavyweights, former Speaker Fanati Kofa, ex-minister Nathaniel McGill, Montserrado County Representative Akaris Gray, and ex-foreign minister Maxwell Kamaya all rushed to the scene. The fire occurs just days after Weah's return to Liberia. He had been away, and a boast to support rebuilding his CDC party's demolished headquarters in record time. At least one prior fire incident was reported in the vicinity. The landlord of a 9th Street property had called for a probe after a fire destroyed an apartment earlier in 2025, pointing to concerns over electrical wiring or unauthorized connections. Given these fragments, we have a crisis unfolding in real time, with more questions than answers. Reading between the flames. Risks, implications, and symbolism. 1. Security and political risk. That a fire would break out in the bedroom, arguably the most sensitive part of a political figure's home, is deeply troubling. Whether accidental or intentional, it suggests a vulnerability in security protocols. If deliberate, it's an escalation not just in vandalism, but a direct threat, psychologically and materially, toward a former head of state. If accidental, it underscores infrastructural fragility even at high levels. In a country like Liberia, where political tensions often run high and checks and balances are fragile, the optics of such an incident are explosive. Rumors will swirl, conspiracy theories will abound. 2. State institutional capacity and public safety. That neighbors had to intervene before the fire service arrived points to limitations in state capacity, personnel, equipment, response times. The LNFS's performance, or lack thereof, will become the focal point in public discourse. In Liberia, weak institutions have often been the Achilles heel of stability and development. Moreover, the earlier fire on 9th Street and claims about unauthorized electrical wiring hint at a broader problem: unsafe building practices, informal modifications, and weak enforcement of building and fire safety regulations. Thus, the incident is not just about politics or symbolism. It exposes systemic vulnerabilities in public safety, urban growth, and infrastructure. 3. Political messaging and narrative control. The timing is uncanny. Weah's return, with the pledge to rebuild his party's headquarters, sets a backdrop of renewed political activity. The fire gives his opponents ammunition to question competence, security, or even raise rumors of sabotage. For the CDC and its supporters, this can be spun as a heroic "we survived" narrative, or as evidence of being under siege. Moreover, by preventing journalists from entering the compound, authorities raise suspicions about transparency and accountability. Whether the motive is to control the narrative or to prevent evidence mishandling, it deepens public mistrust. 4. Symbolism and psychological impact. In many African societies, the home is more than a dwelling, it's a symbol. A fire hitting a former head of state's residence resonates with notions of disruption, fragility, peril. It's not unlike a metaphor. If the lion's den can burn, what of the villages? That aura of vulnerability will amplify public anxieties. Africa-wide perspectives. How do others handle or not fires on political homes? Liberia is not alone in seeing dramatic events, fires, attacks, intrusions on elite residences. But the ways states respond, investigate, and manage the narrative differ widely. Let's compare a few cases and draw lessons. Nigeria, high-profile house attacks and fires in political zones. In Nigeria, the residences of prominent politicians, especially in volatile states, have occasionally been targets of arson, mob attacks, or attacks masked as fire incidents. Sometimes investigations remain opaque, fueling speculation of political vendettas. In Lagos or Abuja, security at elite homes tends to be tighter, but structural problems, power surges, faulty wiring are also known hazards. One key difference: in Nigeria, civil society and media are relatively strong in pressing for independent investigations, though with mixed success. Kenya and South Africa, security norms and fire safety. In more institutionally consolidated countries like Kenya and South Africa, high-level residences are typically heavily secured with backup power, fire suppression, and redundancy systems. If a fire does break out, investigations are swift, forensic, and often public. The expectation of transparency is higher, and the reputational cost of covering up is steeper. Zimbabwe, Uganda, and other places with political tensions, in places where political tensions are high and rule of law weaker, such incidents may be dismissed, downplayed, or immediately cast as conspiracy. Sometimes the response is delayed or politicized. Other times, evidence simply goes missing. The symbolic politics can dominate the facts. Comparative takeaway: transparency matters. In systems where the state is compelled to reveal investigation findings, rumors are dampened and legitimacy preserved. Institutional strength is a buffer. Countries with robust fire services, forensic arms, and independent judiciaries are better placed to manage such crises. Public trust is fragile. A single ambiguous incident can erode faith in both institutions and individuals. Narrative control is often contested. The first version of events often wins in the public mind, so controlling what is revealed or hidden matters enormously. What lies ahead: scenarios, risks, and recommendations. Possible scenarios: 1. Accidental fire. Maybe it was a short circuit, overtaxed wiring, or an appliance failure. In that case, the story becomes one of infrastructure neglect, even for the elite. 2. Deliberate attack or arson. If it was targeted, the political stakes rise precipitously. Who would benefit? Who was threatened? 3. Cover-up or obfuscation. If authorities suppress evidence or drag their feet, they will fuel conspiracy theories and deepen polarization. Each scenario comes with its own dangers and implications, risks to watch. Escalation of political tension, especially if suspicion points across party lines. Retaliatory actions or counter-accusations. Loss of public confidence in security agencies, fire services, and rule of law. Opportunism by third parties exploiting chaos. What we should press for: a forward-looking reform agenda. Independent, transparent investigation, ideally with forensic specialists, audit trails, and public disclosure of findings, no cover stories. Institutional strengthening, boosting LNFS capacity, training, equipment, rapid response, regulating building codes, inspections, especially in dense urban areas, legal safeguards for political residences, clear protocols and protective measures for high-risk residences, electrical safety audits, fire suppression systems, backup systems. Dialogue and confidence building. In a polarized political environment, both major parties must commit to respecting the investigation outcome. Media and civic monitoring. Civil society, press, and watchdogs must serve as independent observers to hold all sides accountable. A touch of humor to lighten the dark. Wouldn't it be ironic if the fire was caused by an overly ambitious power-up strategy? Say, a generator run full blast, air conditioning, and backup battery all humming together. In Liberia's heat, people joke that plugs get tired from working overtime. Note, I am not vouching for the veracity of this joke. But if it's not sabotage, at least it could be an overworked socket. Also, if the official cause ends up being mystery, reporters might start giving the fire a name. Flames of 9th Street, Operation Bedazzle, or Weah's Wick. You can almost imagine editorial headlines vying for best pun. Political fallout, smoke in the arena. For a man like George Weah, who still commands a sizable political following and maintains influence within Liberia's opposition landscape, the optics of this fire are not trivial. Already, the CDC had been gearing up to rebuild its demolished headquarters. The fire adds another symbolic layer. Our party headquarters was torn down. Now even our leader's house is under siege. That framing could galvanize supporters with a martyr-like narrative, but it could also backfire. Liberians weary of constant political drama may view this as another soap opera in the never-ending cycle of elite politics. Every week, it's either a demolition, a fire, or a fight, one Monrovian resident quipped on local radio. When do we actually talk about jobs and rice prices? The risk for Weah is that if no credible cause is established, suspicion may shift internally. Was it negligence, poor maintenance, or something more embarrassing? Politicians rarely like their bedrooms making headlines. Regional implications, Africa's flammable politics. The Weah fire episode sits neatly in a broader African tradition, political residences as stages for drama. Across the continent, such incidents often blur the line between private misfortune and public symbolism. Sierra Leone, 2023-24. Party offices and homes of opposition politicians were mysteriously burned during periods of tension, with little accountability afterward. Nigeria, multiple states. During heated elections, politicians' homes have been torched, usually attributed to unknown gunmen. A phrase now so common it deserves its own entry in African political dictionaries. South Africa, in 2021, former President Zuma's imprisonment coincided with widespread riots and targeted property destruction, though elite homes were largely protected by robust private security systems. Zimbabwe. Fires at politically connected properties are often written off as accidents, but citizens rarely believe the official story. The pattern is clear. In many African countries, private homes of politicians aren't just private, they're political battlefields, symbolic extensions of power, loyalty, and vulnerability. Forward-looking reflections. What Liberia must learn: 1. Rebuild trust through transparency. If Liberian authorities handle this like past incidents, with opacity, sluggish response, or spin, public mistrust will deepen. A transparent, professionally conducted probe, even if it concludes it was a faulty socket, would be refreshing. 2. Strengthen fire services and infrastructure. Liberia's fire service is under-resourced. If even a former president's house can burn before fire trucks arrive, imagine the plight of ordinary Liberians in congested communities like West Point or Painesville. The state must invest in equipment, training, and prevention awareness. 3. Separate symbolism from reality. Not every fire is a coup plot, but in fragile democracies, perception is often reality. Liberia's political actors must resist weaponizing the incident into partisan warfare. 4. Elite responsibility. Africa's elite often demand security, but neglect basic safety. Mansions with diesel generators, improvised wiring, and no sprinkler systems are ticking time bombs. If the incident forces elites to take safety more seriously, then some good may yet come from the flames. A wider African comparison: who handles these crises well? Ghana. When high-profile buildings catch fire, investigations are usually public, though not always conclusive. Still, the Ghana National Fire Service tends to be more visible and proactive. Rwanda. The state would likely frame such an incident as sabotage, but investigations are swift, and outcomes, whether accurate or staged, are communicated quickly to avoid rumor vacuums. Botswana. Fires and accidents at politicians' homes are rare, partly because of stronger safety codes and less polarized politics. Liberia and Sierra Leone. Institutions are weaker, and fire incidents easily become politicized spectacles. In short, how a country manages fire politics is a litmus test of its institutional maturity. Why this matters for Liberia's democracy. Liberia is still in a post-conflict democratization process, with fragile institutions, polarized politics, and a heavy reliance on personality cults. The fire at Weah's home, though perhaps an isolated incident, risks reinforcing a dangerous narrative that politics is always under threat, leaders are always victims, and institutions are always bystanders. If left unchecked, such narratives foster a culture of paranoia and revenge politics, instead of one of institutional problem-solving. A bit more humor before the heat burns us out in Monrovia's streets. Some are already joking. Maybe the fire was just jealous. Weah got a bigger welcome at the airport than the fire service ever does. If politicians keep promising to rebuild everything in record time, maybe they should start with their own fuse boxes. Humor aside, Liberians know too well that when the powerful stumble, the powerless often pay the bigger price. Anticipated next steps. What happens after the smoke clears? 1. The official investigation, or lack thereof. The Liberia National Fire Service, LNFS, will likely announce that it is investigating the cause of the fire. If history is any guide, this investigation may take months, deliver inconclusive results, or simply fade into the shadows, unless external pressure, civil society, media, or international partners pushes for transparency. Liberians shouldn't hold their breath for a forensic report with diagrams and electrical charts. 2. Media frenzy and social media conspiracies. Already, Liberians on Facebook and WhatsApp are spinning the incident into every possible narrative. Oh, sabotage by political enemies. Oh, Weah staged it for sympathy. Oh, the fire was angry about corruption and decided to protest. In an environment where fact-checking is weak, these narratives often carry more weight than official reports. 3. Opposition strategy. The ruling party, Unity Party under President Joseph Boakai, must tread carefully. If they dismiss the fire too lightly, they appear insensitive. If they over-dramatize, they risk inflaming political tensions. Expect official statements of sympathy, but also a subtle push to frame Weah's camp as chaotic or unsafe. 4. CDC's counter-strategy. For Weah's Congress for Democratic Change, the fire is a political opportunity. They can rally supporters around the idea that their leader is under attack, strengthen solidarity, and frame themselves as victims of the state. Coupled with Weah's promise to rebuild CDC headquarters, this could become a powerful mobilization tool. International angle. Will the world care? Let's be honest. International partners, US, EU, ECOWAS, UN, are unlikely to treat this as a diplomatic crisis. Fires happen everywhere. But if suspicions of foul play linger, or if the incident coincides with upcoming political protests, donors and diplomats may issue boilerplate statements about respecting democratic processes and ensuring the safety of all political leaders. But Liberia's international partners also know that fires can ignite more than buildings. They can inflame fragile political systems. In a country with a history of civil war, even symbolic incidents can snowball into destabilization if not carefully managed. Lessons for Liberia and Africa's political class. 1. Security beyond bodyguards. Many African leaders prioritize motorcades and personal security, but neglect basic home infrastructure. Wiring, fire suppression, safe generators. A modern democracy cannot afford to have its leaders' homes burned down like thatched huts. 2. Transparency as a fire extinguisher. Nothing fuels suspicion like silence. Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria could learn from Ghana, where even flawed investigations are at least shared publicly. Governments must communicate findings quickly and clearly. 3rd, stop politicizing tragedy. Fires, accidents, and disasters should not automatically become partisan weapons. Otherwise, real lessons are lost, and citizens remain exposed to preventable risks. Broader African governance lens, when homes become political arenas. Across Africa, personal residences of political elites often double as power hubs, where decisions are made, deals are struck, and loyalties are tested. When those spaces are attacked, destroyed, or burned, the symbolism is immense. In Nigeria, unknown gunmen torch homes of governors and lawmakers as a warning. In Ethiopia, regional leaders' homes have been targeted amid ethnic conflicts. In Côte d'Ivoire, houses of rival politicians were looted during the 2010-11 crisis. This reflects a deeper reality. African politics is still too personalized. Institutions matter less than individuals, so when an individual's home burns, the system shakes. Strengthening state institutions, not just private compounds, remains Africa's unfinished homework. Looking ahead, Liberia's 2026 political season. This fire may well become part of the narrative heading into the 2026 elections. Expect these possible refrains. From the CDC, they burned our party HQ, now they've burned our leaders' home, yet we remain strong. From the ruling party, even fire can't cleanse corruption. From ordinary Liberians, if only they fought fires with the same energy they fight over rice prices. If not properly managed, the fire could inflame partisan tensions. If handled transparently, it could become a turning point to strengthen trust in Liberia's institutions. A lighthearted closing note for now. Liberians are masters of political humor. One street vendor reportedly joked, "If Weah rebuilds his bedroom in record time, like he promised for CDC headquarters, maybe he should open a construction company instead of running for president again." Humor aside, the fire is a sobering reminder that weak institutions leave everyone vulnerable, from market women to ex-presidents. What Liberia and Africa must do, from smoke to solutions: 1. Strengthen public safety infrastructure. If even a former president's home can burn while neighbors scramble with buckets, what chance do ordinary citizens have? Liberia must invest in its fire services, better training, modern trucks, and water supply systems. Routine building inspections in urban Monrovia, where aging electrical grids are fire hazards waiting to happen. Public awareness campaigns on fire prevention, especially in densely packed communities. Other African nations offer models. Rwanda invests heavily in urban safety protocols, while Botswana enforces building codes with surprising efficiency for a small state. Liberia can adapt these lessons. 2. Depoliticize disasters. One of Africa's recurring flaws is the tendency to turn every misfortune into a political weapon. Fires, floods, and accidents quickly become partisan storylines. Liberia's ruling party and CDC must resist this temptation or risk creating an atmosphere of perpetual crisis. Take Ghana, for instance. While its politics is lively, disasters, like the 2015 Accra flood and fire, sparked national mourning and institutional reflection rather than being used as ammunition against political rivals. Liberia could benefit from a similar ethos of national over partisan response. 3. Institutionalized transparency. Liberians don't just need answers about George Weah's house, they need assurance that their government is capable of truth-telling. A transparent public investigation into the fire, however small, can set a precedent that no one, not even a former president, is above accountability. South Africa's post-apartheid model of public inquiries, though often politicized, still offers a roadmap. Publish findings, accept scrutiny, and demonstrate independence. Liberia should emulate that culture of disclosure. 4. Reframe political culture away from personalization. The fact that Liberia's politics now revolves around Weah's house fire speaks volumes. African politics too often conflates the private sphere of leaders with the public life of citizens. True democracy separates the two. Institutions should matter more than individuals. Homes should stop being seen as power outposts. Citizens' everyday safety must become as newsworthy as elite residences burning. 5. Regional peer learning ECOWAS, often seen only during coups or election crises, could also lead in institutional safety reforms. Sharing best practices on fire safety in urban Africa. Supporting capacity building for municipal services. Establishing minimum safety standards for political residences across member states. It may sound unglamorous compared to peace talks, but preventing fires is part of stabilizing fragile democracies. After all, a democracy where leaders' homes burn unchecked is one where public trust smolders too. Forward-looking. Message Liberia stands at a crossroads. It can either treat the 9th Street fire as another episode in the theater of politics as usual, or it can turn the crisis into a catalyst for reform. The choice is not just about Weah's bedroom, it's about whether Liberia's democracy learns to protect both its leaders and its citizens with equal urgency. Across Africa, similar lessons apply. From Nigeria's unknown gunmen torching homes, to Zimbabwe's mysterious fires, to South Africa's riots, the continent has seen how fragile systems collapse when personal safety becomes political. Yet, countries like Botswana and Ghana show that stronger institutions and transparent responses can contain crises before they ignite wider chaos. Liberia's leaders, and indeed Africa's political class, must understand that democracy isn't only about elections, it's about whether citizens and even ex-presidents can sleep at night without fearing that their homes might go up in flames. A witty parting thought before we continue. Liberians have started joking that maybe ECOWAS should add fire extinguishers to its rapid intervention kits, right next to peacekeepers and negotiators. Because in Africa, fires, literal and metaphorical, always seem to arrive faster than solutions. Advice to African leaders: stop playing with fire one. Invest in institutions, not just elections. Elections are flashy, but institutions save lives. Fire services, forensic labs, urban planners, these don't win rallies, but they build resilience. Leaders must learn that democracy without safety is just democracy on paper. 2, make transparency a habit, not a performance. Stop treating transparency like a wedding suit, only worn on special occasions. From fires to finances, the public deserves to know the truth without begging for it. When you hide facts, you fan the flames of conspiracy. 3, depersonalize power. If a country's stability hinges on whether a single man's bedroom burns, then that country's democracy is fragile. Leaders should work to ensure that institutions, not personalities, carry the weight of governance. 4th, regional solidarity beyond coup. ECOWAS and the African Union love to mobilize during coup and unconstitutional changes of government. But where are they when bad wiring, unsafe housing, or institutional decay undermine citizens' daily lives? A proactive regional agenda on public safety and urban resilience would save more lives than yet another communiqué condemning a junta. 5, lead by example. African leaders should make their homes models of best practice. Fire alarms, backup sprinklers, independent inspections. If you want citizens to follow laws, show that you yourself live by them. Key messages. The fire at George Weah's 9th Street residence is not just about one man's misfortune, it's a mirror of Liberia's fragile institutions. Across Africa, elite homes often become political arenas, showing how personalized and vulnerable governance remains. Transparency, strong public services, and depoliticized responses are the only way to prevent private tragedies from spiraling into public crises. The incident should remind African leaders that a democracy's true test lies not in how it runs elections, but in how it protects lives and property. A forward-looking closing Liberia's fire will fade from headlines. But if it sparks reforms, stronger institutions, safer infrastructure, more transparent governance, it could mark a turning point. If not, it risks becoming just another entry in Africa's long catalog of avoidable tragedies wrapped in political theater. African leaders would do well to remember, fires don't just burn houses, they burn trust. And once trust is gone, no fire service in the world can put it back together. And since Liberians love their humor, let's end with this street joke making the rounds in Monrovia. If Weah can rebuild CDC headquarters and his bedroom in record time, maybe the government should hire him as Minister of Public Works. At least the projects might finish before the next election. Thank you for watching The Bold African Voice, BAV. The fire at George Weah's 9th Street home is more than a personal tragedy. It's a reflection of the challenges facing Liberia and Africa as a whole. Don't forget, democracy is tested not just at the ballot box, but in how we protect lives, property, and trust. If you found this analysis insightful, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into Africa's most pressing stories. Until next time, stay bold, stay informed, and keep the African voice alive.